Greetings, groovy people! Welcome to the channel. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon, and this week we're doing a kind of tutorial. I don't know that I'm qualified to call this a tutorial or not, but flashes are something that, as an artist, I have struggled with creating accurately with traditional media. So this video is just me finally forcing myself to tackle it again after trying to create them when I was a beginner artist. You know, I was so starry-eyed, I was gonna do everything, and then I failed several times to create the effect and got scared and gave up. This is the year of inking. That's what I wanted to focus on this year. And so I am forcing myself to tackle something that I, even to this day, am intimidated to create. I am not making a beta flash yet because I have not been able to successfully create that. I don't know what my damage is. I don't know why I can't surmount that, but this is just a normal flash. So some of this is going to be in real time, and a lot of it I'm going to time lapse because it took me about a half an hour, not counting the times I stepped away to allow the ink to dry. You can do these things digitally, but I don't have any add-ons in my CS5 program to do flashes. So come with me as I at least talk a little bit about how I finally was able to create a normal flash, not a beta flash. A beta flash looks like this, just to give you a point of reference. You might have noticed that I started by putting down a horizon line in graphite, and then I used a circle tool. You can use a compass, you don't have to have like a circle ruler to do this, but I basically drew a circle around the character so that I know what my radius of this flash is going to be. You can fudge a little bit on that, but going outside of the circle, but I wanted to know what my main focus was, and then in the middle of that circle is the focal point. The focal point is very important because otherwise it's just going to be random lines if you aren't starting from a specific point that you want the flash to radiate from, if that makes sense. So I put that cross there, and a lot of times professional mangaka will put like a tack or a push pin or something there in order to keep their place. However, I don't really, because I'm using a light box, I don't have anything to push that tack into, and so I'm just being careful and making sure that I'm putting an appropriate amount of weight on my ruler so that it doesn't slide out from under me while I'm working. That's very important. Something else that's very important if you're using a nib, it might not be quite as important if you have a technical pen or, you know, like a fine liner. I don't usually use those for this because I want the point to taper off. That's kind of, you know, one of the things that makes this effect so effective, for lack of a better word. But I do know that you have to have a ruler that has some kind of metal guard, or you can put like a couple coins under it and tape that down, just so that your nib is not, you know, there's a little bit of space between what your nib is pushed against and where the ink is going down, because otherwise it's just going to kind of slide underneath the ruler and make a huge mess. Don't ask how I know. I've made that mistake several times before. So it's important to have some kind of edge on your ruler that leaves a bit of space between the actual bottom of the ruler and the side of the ruler that you're using. Don't use the flip side of the ruler. You can do this any way you want, but I kind of divvied the image up into quadrants so that I could work on a quarter of the flash at a time. Whichever direction you end up moving, you could start in any quarter, but you want to move in one direction with your ruler so that you're not rubbing against ink that you've just placed down. So in case of what I'm doing here, I start with the upper left-hand quadrant and I start moving counterclockwise, and I keep going counterclockwise until I'm ready for a break to let the ink dry. When you're putting down your flash, and this is going to be kind of, it's something that you kind of have to eyeball and figure for yourself how you want to do this, but you're gonna want to figure out how deep you want each line to go. You want it to be somewhat in a circle around whatever it is that you're focusing on. even that, I really don't do that well in this video, but I at least have been able to successfully create the taper that I want on the lines. What I did was I put the ruler down. I'm using my little 6-inch ruler from a larger ruler that I just cut in half. My partner cut it in half for me. I like the shorter ruler because there's less leverage on it, less room for accident. It's just easier for me to handle for this specific image. I place the ruler down, and to make the taper, I start outside, away from the focal point. I start with more pressure, and then I move my pen, I think at around a 40 degree or 45 degree angle, I think is what they say, but I don't really pay that close of attention. It's just something that's kind of second nature to me. But I push down with more pressure, and then as I get closer to the focal point, when I'm ready to lift up the pen, I start easing up on the pressure, and in doing so, you create that taper that is kind of what you see in most, at least manga. They probably do the same in Western comics. But once I put down one line, I try to judge, what would look good. I try to make this a little bit random. Sometimes I will put 2 lines next to each other really closely, 2 or 3 lines. Next time I'll have 1 line, next time I'll have 2 lines. I just really want to kind of make it spaced in kind of an interesting way, because I'm not creating that beta flash where there's a lot more lines and it's going to, be kind of darkened on the outside. So I'm trying to vary the space between the lines so that it looks, at least to me, visually pleasing. And then I'll just keep going counterclockwise until I get to a stopping point, and you can turn the page. Make sure you let it dry, as I mentioned earlier, and then you just keep going. Or if you are left-handed, maybe it's easier for you to go clockwise so that you're not rubbing or touching the ink as you put it down. One of the things is the movement itself should probably be a little quick when you're putting the line down, but when you're deciding where to place those lines, until you're more comfortable with making flashes, I would suggest taking your time. Put the line down quicker just so that it has that energy, but take your time when you're going to put down the next line, just because if you start rushing, like later in the video, I wasn't paying attention. I was getting into the groove and I messed up and I smeared. I actually touched some of my ink. If that happens, don't panic, because you can use correction fluid, you can use gouache, you can use white ink, you can use gel pen, you can use some kind of white to cover up that mistake. And I've actually seen that in a lot of my manga instructional books that are from Japan that have been obviously translated into English. They use like a correctional fluid. You can use just about anything. Get creative. While it's nice to have the tools of the professional, if you don't have money to afford that, then you can still create art. You don't have to have the professional tools to at least get started. Yeah, do they make your life easier? Certainly, yeah, for sure. But it's not like they're mandatory to create art. People are creative. Leonardo was constantly experimenting with different mediums and materials. Like, I think at one point he put sand in his paint and shit. Like, that's why a lot of his stuff hasn't, really lasted that long. But he was experimental and was willing to kind of break out of his comfort zone to see what would work. And, sometimes you need that innovation when you're creating, especially if you don't necessarily have all the tools that would be considered professional level. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's really all I have to say about the flash itself. I wanted to get the tutorial part. This flash is not the best flash there is. You can tell that when I got in that lower, or if I'm already there, if I'm not, when I get into the lower right hand quadrant, I really fucked up on the flash because I didn't make the lines get close enough to the focal point. How I amended this when I did the page, which I'll show at the end. This is a page from Dark Horse, my free not safe for work webcomic, links down in the description. But because I do have Photoshop, when I actually scanned this flash in, I lengthened, I transformed and lengthened those lines a little bit to make the circle around the focal point a little more even. Because this is my first semi-successful flash that I've done that actually has more than like 4 or 5 lines. But I was able to like vary the line width and stuff with this. I think that's a really good thing to do. You can make your lines thicker by putting down more pressure, and I did that on a few of the flashes. Some of the flashes I did really lightly, and I did that intentionally, shockingly enough. I did do something intentionally. So it really helps to give it a little bit more energy and make it look a little more professional. But like I said, this is not a professional flash. It was really my first try in several years to actually make a good flash. But something finally clicked, so when I do my next flash, I won't be so scared. I'll actually do it. And I will get better at it. And the more you do this, the better you will get. So I just want to show how, yeah, I kind of suck at this, but I'm going to keep getting better. And if you're someone who's kind of scared to start, I understand that fear, because like look at this. I've been working on this fucking comic since 2008. And because I fucked up and was so scared to mess something up, I stopped trying, and it's taken me it's taken me more than 10 years. It's taken me over a decade to surmount that fear and stop being lazy. And, well, in my case, it was me being lazy. I'm not saying that other people are being lazy, but it's taken me that long to finally tell myself, look, you need to fucking overcome this hill if you want to have your comic look better, because this shit you're using doesn't look good. And it doesn't look professional, and you've been doing this long enough that you really need to step up your game. These are like my personal goals. You don't have to tell yourself this. Everyone's in their own place when it comes to how they create art and what they're ready to try. But I definitely do suggest trying. And once you try, don't be like me. Don't get scared. Just keep trying and trying and trying. It's like riding a bike. You're not gonna learn how to do it immediately. You gotta keep getting back on the bike every time you fall off. And, I'm just trying to impart something that's held me back for years, was not just doing it and forcing myself to learn. I got so frustrated, so mad at myself, so depressed with my art that I just stopped trying. And personally, I feel that's held me back. So, you don't have to take my advice, but just when I finally sat down and did this year, and when I was mildly successful, clearly my bar for success is set really, really fucking low. So clearly this is all it took to make me happy and feel like I succeeded. But at the same time, that small victory is giving me more confidence so that I can keep trying and keep getting better. And then eventually it's just gonna be like, okay, I don't give a fuck. I just gotta do this, so here we go. If that makes sense. But yeah, this is a page from Act 7 of Dark Horse. The Crystal Lotus is the act that this was for. That act is complete now, and it will be up on my main website starting in November. If you're one of my patrons, you would have already seen this entire act. I had it uploaded before I posted it to Webtoons. Last weekend, I was part of the Webcomics Library online convention, Webcomics convention. I and a couple of my fellow members in Aaaahhhhhh, Magical Girl Collective, we did a Magical Girls panel, which was a lot of fun. It was so cool meeting other people in our collective. I have interacted with a handful of them, but it was kind of cool actually talking to people and then sharing our information with the audience at large. So, yeah, if you're interested in Aaaahhhhh, I'll go ahead and put a link down there. If you like magical girls, or magical boys, or magical people, really, it's all inclusive. It doesn't have to be magical girls. It's just kind of the traditional genre title, so it's inclusive. The collective is very inclusive. What else? Oh, and then like at the beginning of the video I was talking about the Natural Wonders Zine Kickstarter that's going on right now, so definitely check that out, please. We want the Kickstarter to be successful. It's Pride Month zines. It's celebrating nature, the green stripe of the Pride flag, but it's just celebrating Pride Month in general. So there's a lot of LGBTQ plus content in there, so I highly recommend checking it out. And also, you know, Comic Fury zine. We just released the Not Safe for Work zine, but we're also now taking applications for the Safe for Work Halloween zine. I'm gonna make sure that it's out for Halloween. So if you're interested in that, if you're hosting a comic on Comic Fury and you have an idea for campfire spooky stories, you can check that out. It is safe for work this time, so we're going to be censoring stuff just to keep it, you know, a little... It needs to be scary, but not a lot of blood and gore and stuff like that. I think that's all I got to say. Thanks for visiting. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, ask or send me an email. And otherwise, you can support the channel with Patreon, Ko-fi, Subscribestar, any of that good stuff. Links are down in the description. Liking, subbing, doing the bell thing, all that stuff's groovy. I don't even know why I bother saying that. Everybody says it, so I don't feel like I really even need to say it. Yeah, anyway, peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.